那么今天非常荣幸能邀请到 Polypride 的2位重量级嘉宾。Polypride Country Day School 呢，它中文名叫玻璃预备学校，坐落在布鲁克林，成立于1854年，是一所100年老校。1890年呢就已经成为全美最大的预科学校之一。玻璃预科走读学校呢也是纽约8大常青藤预备学校之一，是远近闻名的运动和辩论强校。那参加过我们今年5月的华裔藤校学子分享会的家长朋友们应该也知道哈，拿到哈耶普斯一众藤校 offer 的大满贯选手 Tess Vera， 还有其他2位拿到藤校和顶尖文理学院早录的这个2个学生呢，他们都是 Polyprep 今年的毕业生。那么接下来我们隆重介绍一下我们的2位嘉宾，Miss Graham 和诗涵老师。Mr. Graham 目前是 Polyprep 的副校长，最早是纽约大学招生办的副主任，后任加州排名第1的顶尖私立高中哈佛西湖高中部院长。那我们的诗涵老师呢，也是 Polyprep 的全球战略部总监，之前在留学培训考试也有10余年了，毕业于宾夕法尼亚大学的教育学硕士。所以我们今天的分享会呢，将要覆盖以下几个议题，包括美国顶尖私立学校的独特教育理念与方法，还有顶尖私立学校学生如何规划课外活动，以及艺术、体育等不同特长生本科名校的升学渠道。我们同样也会讨论到一些成功的升学案例分析和如何打造卓越的学术与领导力。那么 Mr. Graham 呢，先是会围绕这些议题做出分享，那诗涵老师呢会做一个翻译和补充解答。有问题的家长呢可以保留自己的问题到 Q&A 环节，我们2位嘉宾会一一做出解答。Hi, Mr. Graham and Ms. Shihan. Thank you so much for being here to share your insights and expertise with us today. Would you like to say hi to our community?
Okay, I'll go first. Hello， 我现在正在北京，然后各位家长朋友们，大家好。我现在正在北京享受着北京的美食，然后呢，也是做一些招生的工作。然后 Mr. Graham 还有我们另外一位领导呢，也会在下周加入到我们的行程中来啊。所以今天很高兴能够回到祖国的怀抱，然后跟大家再去聊一聊我们美国的这个Polyprep 这所学校，所以非常开心啊。
我补充一句我就是家长朋友，就是你们可能听过很多的这类似的讲座，但是我跟大家讲，就是我们 Grant 他的一个独特的一个背景是，他之前在加州的哈佛西湖工作，他的主要的工作其实就是帮助加州那个哈佛西湖的学生指导他们的大学升学指导，所以在美国的家长都知道。这是一所在加州顶级的一个私立学校，他们大学的录取是非常亮眼的。然后呢，就被咱们 Poly 给挖到纽约来了，跨州搬家，从东海岸搬到西海岸。然后你看他也是负责学生的那个 Admission， 也就是说大学的升学指导工作。所以这2年我是看着那个 Poly 的这个升学数据的哈，就咱们非常非常的好。所以他既有在大学招生办的这个工作经历，原来在 NYU 也有指导学生的经历，所以2边他都能够看到。所以大家如果有什么问题，可以在这个我们这对话框里面打进来，他可以能够给到你的一些回答，我相信是一些比较独特的一些视角，就不光光是从指导学生这一块，也不光是我就站在那边看，站在招生官以大学招生官的这个角度来看你的申请材料。我就啰嗦这一点哈。可以把问题打进。
Mr. Graham, would you like to say hi to our families?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity to chat with you all. I'm looking at the chat messages right now, where everyone's from, and it's just incredible to see the crowd coming in from all over the world. So thank you. And I hope anything I say today, my style is I'm typically very candid and very blunt about how the process actually works, and sort of peel back the curtain and talk about. Sorry, someone was. Anyway, so I'm going to be very candid about how the admissions game actually works, not how colleges want you to think how it works, and there's a big distinction there. So I'm excited. Hopefully we can be we can have some great dialogue here.
Thank you, Miss Graham。那我们话不多说，我们就开始我们今天第一个问题吧。那我们第一个问题呢，其实与 Poly 学生大学申请战略规划有关，因为我们知道今年就是 Poly 的这个录取结果也特别好，所以Miss Graham，Poly has sent many students to top college. Can you share your last year result and what are these students doing right in their strategic planning that others might not know about?
Sure. So I came to Poly Prep in 2016 from a high school in California called Harvard Westlake, very prominent, world famous high school. And in 2016, when I came to Poly, so I've now been here, this is my 8th year. I've been through 7 college admissions cycles since being at Poly. And in 5 of those 7 years, we've broken the school's all-time record for the highest percentage of students gaining admission to US News and World Report top 25 colleges. Last year, we actually broke the school's record for the highest percentage of kids gaining admission to an Ivy League college. So the school's been around since 1854. So that's quite a feat. And as you all know, obviously, the college game is getting harder and harder. It's getting more selective. And yet we're having the best results that we've ever had in the history of the school. And I think it's a combination of understanding how the game works, which you'll get a taste of today. It's not a meritocracy. It's not a lottery. It's a game. And there's incentives and players, and there's a way to play the game. And so what we've been doing is being very strategic about building what I call an asset inventory for every kid at the school, and then trying to leverage their assets. And it's not unlike, if anyone's on the call, any of the students, if you play video games, I was a big gamer growing up. When you play video games, you want to play to the strengths of your character, right? You want to figure out what is my character good at, and then I want to play to those strengths. And it's very similar to the college process. So we've been doing that. We've sent, if you look at our matriculation list on our website, we're sending kids to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford. We're sending kids to the best schools, Oxford, Cambridge, the best schools around the world. And the thing I like the most about it, I can't emphasize this enough, is I like the fact that when I was on the college side, there were all these little secrets and tricks and things that we kept from the public. And I think my favorite thing about this work is to come in with families and say, this is how it works, and let's play back, right? Let's try to win. And so it's an empowering feeling when kids come in and feel like, oh, wow, now I know how it works. Now I understand how my file is going to be reviewed. I understand how I can put myself in a favorable position. And it's just a great feeling. So I love what I do. I love being here. I love helping kids and families. And I'm excited to chat with you today. But our kids are doing remarkably well in the college process. I think Poly's outcomes are on a trajectory right now that is pretty incredible. I am so sorry. In the background, if you hear construction, we're building a $12 million art center on our campus here at Poly in the background. And so there's a bit of, I'm sorry, now and again, there's construction noise.
Mary， 我要翻译一下吗？咱们的家庭需要，OK， 也需要翻译一下。简单翻译一下吧。对，就是我们在这个6年之间，就是他来到 Poly 的这6到7年之间呢，我们每年都突破了记录，就是我们的学生进到 Ivy League 和进到前25的大学在他的这个领导下，然后 Mr. Graham 呢，他特别会使用一个就是说这个具体的一个算法和方法论来去完成这个目标。那么对他来说呢，很重要的一个，他认为大学其实是一场游戏，大学申请其实某种程度上是一个游戏，有游戏规则的一场游戏，所以他会在这个过程中很好的去利用好学生的资产，对一个资产列表进行分析和进行一个跟大学进行一个交换，然后在这个过程中能够更好的去凸显出学生的优势来。所以这中间的策略和这个中间的其实需要我们去做的战略部署还是比较精准的，需要啊。所以在这个过程中，我们有了这样的一个体系之后呢，我们的学校的这个整个的一个升学会真的是会逐年变好，就是变得更强啊。我们有大概15到20的学生都是被藤校录取的，每年都有去大藤的这些学生哈，包括我们去年讲到的这位被哈耶普斯全部录取的这个孩子也是Mr. Graham亲自指导的，所以他今天也很高兴能够来到这里跟大家分享一下具体的这个大学升学的这么一些思路。然后对，他觉得这个工作特别有意义的一点在于，就是我们能够更好的帮助学生去赢得这场战役。如果说这场是一场这个游戏的话，我们知道规则之后。 后，我们能更好的去做这个更好的准备，从而能够在这个过程中胜出。
好，谢谢 Miss Graham，谢谢诗涵老师。然后对今年的Poly 的这个录取结果非常的 impressive。然后那我们具体来说的话，就是针对于呢有运动和艺术特长的这个学生，那我们就是作为学校的话，可以给到怎么样的支持，或者说怎么样的指导？那么这个下一个问题是关于这个不同的这个特长生的一个升学渠道。Miss Graham, we know some students are really talented in sport or arts. How can this student get noticed by top US university? And for a student who are really good in sport or arts, how important are academic grades when they are applying to college?
Sure, great question. Look, here's something I have to tell students all the time that's a misconception of how this process works. A kid will come in at our school at Poly Prep. We have very strong sports programs, so nationally recognized sports. And kids will come in and families will sometimes be apologetic when their child doesn't play a sport. And they'll say, gosh, I know colleges want to see a kid play a sport. And so let me just start by saying, colleges don't care if you play a sport. They don't care at all. In fact, if you play a varsity sport at your high school and you're really good, the only time when that's going to affect you is if the college coach at the college to which you're applying thinks you're so good that they want you and they put their support behind you in the admissions process, right? So in other words, you could be Poly Prep has a state championship basketball team. We've won three consecutive state championships in New York. We have a bunch of kids who are really good at basketball, but you can be a starting player on our basketball team, be really good, help us win a state championship. But if that kid applies to Duke and they're not good enough to get the attention of the Duke coach, then their playing basketball in high school is meaningless. It doesn't have any impact on their college process. The fact that they just play basketball at Poly for a state championship team, they have to be good enough to get the attention of the coach, and the coach has to want them. And then the coach has to have enough support in admissions to put behind them. So for example, yesterday, I'm meeting with a family here where the kid has been getting courted all along from a particular college coach in one of our sports, showing a bunch of love, texting them, calling them, bringing them to campus, all this stuff. And then yesterday, yesterday was October 26th, about 5 or 6 days before the admissions deadline for early decision, this student at Poly was dropped like a bad habit. The coach just found another kid that they like more athletically. So, see ya. My student, now we got to find another option. Now we're calling schools that they didn't think they were going to be going to and trying to engage with those schools. So the moral of the story is that athletics plays a gigantic role in the admissions process, right? Gigantic. Like I've had kids in my career get into places like Stanford and Duke and Columbia and Brown as athletes that if they weren't athletes, their GPA would never have gotten them into the school, right?
Yep.
But in those cases, those kids are really, really good at their sport. So I've had students represent the United States and the Olympic team as high school students in their sport. We've had kids I've worked with that are national champions in their sport. So if you're really, really good, athletics can be a very powerful tool, right? To open up admission to colleges. But just playing a sport, like put it this way, if you're on this call and you're in 8th grade and you're thinking, well, which sport should I take up so that I can be good enough to get into a college? It's too late, right? It's very hard to just decide, I'm going to be a nationally recognized wrestler. I'm going to be a nationally recognized tennis player. Like that's something that starts at a younger age typically. Okay, so at the Division III level, at colleges like Williams, Amherst, WashU, UChicago, you don't typically need to be as good of an athlete. You need to be very good, but usually the bar for academics is much higher. So they want their athletes to have a stronger profile academically. At the Division I level, if you are the best in the nation at what you do, you can get in almost anywhere, right? If you're that good. But it's sort of a sliding scale. If you're the best in the country, you can have maybe a lower GPA. If you're not the best, you have to have a higher academic profile. That's kind of how it works. The arts are tricky, right? My wife is an artist. That was her background. If you are applying to NYU Tisch, that's where she went. If if you apply to NYU Tisch and you're auditioning, so you're coming in and you're getting in front of faculty and you're doing your thing, that audition is going to play a very large role. But if you're applying to Duke or you're applying to Dartmouth and you're the lead in the high school musical, and you take the opportunity to submit the Common App art supplement to your school, and you think that's going to carry the day, it's going to be harder, right? And the arts doesn't have in the US, and again, I know this is a long answer, but in the US, there is a tremendous amount of infrastructure surrounding college athletics. There's a lot of money involved. There's a lot of TV rights for big games, and big donors care about sports. The arts doesn't have the same kind of institutional pull in admissions. So typically it's a smaller, like in my career, I've counseled thousands of kids. I could talk for 5 hours giving examples of times where athletics played a big role. I could probably talk for 5 minutes about the times when arts has played a big role, right? And it's not because I haven't had wonderful artists. It's because, again, there isn't just a gigantic group of alumni saying, if we don't win the football game against, our rival, I'm not giving more money. And that drives a lot of the athletic admissions process. There isn't that same kind of, we better beat our rival and having the best musical. Like it's just not the same kind of pressure.
好的，我给翻译一下。对，咱们校长讲到的话呢，就是对于体育这个部分啊，对于体育这个部分，家长肯定也非常感兴趣。我孩子就是有体育运动，是不是就可以进藤校，或者可以解锁一些可能性？对他来说呢，他说他在他的职业生涯中呢，见过学生真的是通过就是这个体育进入到藤校的，但通常情况下呢，这个水平呢是相当高的，那基本上就是国家级的水平啊，要不就是国家的什么运动队的冠军啊，或者是这种就是代表美国队参加奥运会的呀，这样的孩子，就他能够到大藤啊，或者这种第一的学校啊，尤其是这种大的这个 Ivy League 这个长技能的联盟啊，所以说这个还是这个 bar 还是挺高的，就他的这个整个的一个要求还是挺高的。然后学生需要去做的努力呢，也确实相对来说不是说你可以8年级就想说，哎，我想做一个运动，让我不能够通过这个运动进藤校，可能就有点晚了。就是很多运动其实是需要很早的时候就开始，对它进行训练呐，还有包括进行专注呀，花的时间啊什么的，其实也是会是投资的比较多的啊。所以说，在这个角度来说的话呢，体育它会有帮助，但如果说你只是体育的水平比较一般的情况下呢，这个体育其实你踢不踢这个球，或者你打不打这个比赛，对于大学来说呢，也并不是说最重要的。尤其是大学的一些这个咱们的这个招生的录取的这个流程吧，就是教练可以说想要你，但是教练也可以立刻说我又不想要你了。我们上周就有一个学生就是已经被教练基本是选中了，选秀已经选中了，教练也说会要他了，可是教练这2天又看上了另外一个运动员了，所以就直接跟他说不行了。就是说教练呢，如果能给你背书，他如果能支持你的话，但这个支持你说在申请的过程中是不是有变数的，这个还是会有的啊。然后包括就是教练这块他也要去跟招生办沟通，然后他能不能就是把这个话的分量呢说的有多大，这个都是也是因情况而定的，它不是就是板上钉钉的。所以呢，就是对于体育升学来说，还是有这一方面的一些冒险性吧。然后对于艺术升学来说，这个其实他觉得总的来说从产业的角度来说，体育的产业在美国是非常成熟的，然后后面也有很多的资本在这边运作。然后对于一些学校的这个体育的赛事来说，有各种的媒体的曝光，还有包括各种的这个这个门票的出售，还有包括可能这个对于一些校友来说，他们其实是非常热血的支持他们的球队的。如果球队不赢的话，这个校友都不捐赠了，所以会有这种情况发生。那么对于这些来说，都是会给高校很大的压力，说我们要去很好的去在运动员的选秀方面做出努力，然后去选择一些非常顶尖的运动员加入到学校。那么对于艺术产业来说，这相对来说大家也知道，艺术嘛，肯定没有像体育这么的在美国产业化所以对于艺术生来说，可能你在艺术升学这方面还是会有一定的，比起体育来说会有一定的这个局限性。他说他可以在他的这个职业生涯中去举他之前送过的体育生，可以举5个小时，但是他说如果说你要举艺术生的话，他可能就20分钟就讲完了 啊，就是没有那么的多的那个门道吧。完了呢，他说他太太就是在那个就 NYU Tisch 毕业嘛，纽约大学 Tisch，然后他说这个学校就是也是门槛很高，完了你要去试镜呐，就 audition 呐，然后就各种的需要去做的一些努力，然后再去尝试，然后看说，哎，这个艺术这个路能不能走。所以他这个确实思路和这个底层逻辑是不太一样的。
对，Graham 校长揭示了一个真实的一个体育升学这个现状。他同样也提到了，就是说，如果你真的可以做到国家级别的话，那有可能你的这个学术表现或者其他方面的话，就稍微可以不用那么，就是不会那么被看到，然后不用那么被value。但是如果你本身只是 good at it 的话，那你的 GPA 啊或者其他学术表现的话，那还是挺重要的，在申请过程中。对，那接下来这个问题呢，就是我觉得很多我们今天来家长会关心啊，因为很多家庭今天都是来在海外，然后对于国际生来说的话，那本身分到的招生名额就很少嘛，然后大家又是跟本国顶尖的这个学生去竞争，那么这个竞争是可以想象是十分白热化的。所以那我们就是想问一下这个Mr. Grant 呢，那对于我们这种就是 international student 这个国际生的话，有没有一些策略或者一些指导意见？Mr. Graham, today we have many families from Singapore, from Hong Kong, and mainland China, from students for students from other countries getting into our U.S. university seems even more competitive. What tips do you have for them based on what they have seen, what you have seen at Poly Prep?
How much time do we have, right? It's not, I'm joking in that it's 9:30 in the morning here. We could go all day talking about this topic. This is a very interesting topic. So yeah, first of all, if you are on this call and you're and the student that is part of your family applying, or if you're a kid on this call yourself, if your citizenship is something outside of the US, the first thing you have to recognize is that if you were to look at, let's say, the Ivies, right, Ivy League colleges, and you go back the last 25 years and just put together a graph of the percentage of students on those campuses who identify as international students, it's typically about 12%. That's what it is. And it doesn't really change that much. So a couple of my, all of my friends, I always tell Shihan this, like all of my friends are college admissions reps. Like that's my world, right? So when I go to weddings, it's with college people. When I have my wedding, it's college people. Like that's just what it is, right? So when I'm talking to friends who are specifically the director of international admissions at their colleges, at really highly selective colleges, very prominent schools, they are essentially like rare stamp collectors. So what I mean by that is if they have, for every 100 seats in the class at an Ivy, if they're going to bring in 12 international students, they want to get countries they haven't had before. They want to get, right? So I was talking the other day about a kid who's from Canada, okay? And I was talking to a friend, and the student is a Canadian citizen, okay? And we were a very impressive student academically, and we were talking about their college list and their application strategy, which we'll hopefully get into later, kind of how the game actually works. And my friend said, I would recommend schools that don't have hockey. And for a second, I paused and I said, oh, because you're saying if they have hockey, of course they're going to have Canadians, right? The whole team's going to be Canadian. And therefore the international admissions rep, sorry, oops, dropped my pen. The international admissions rep who's trying to fill 12% of the school with international students is going to feel like, I already have Canada, right? I have plenty of Canadians. So let me try to get, so you're up against international students just from the get-go at the most selective colleges, the Ivy League schools. You're up against tough competition. Then I think about, I drew this bell curve, right? You can't really see it here. I'll draw it. Look, here's a classic bell curve, right? Okay, like a normal distribution. do you know how often, and I don't know, of course, I'm seeing people from all over the world, but let's talk about specifically Chinese boys. Chinese boys applying to unbelievably selective US colleges, if we were to do the sort of bell curve distribution of their intended major, STEM. Every kid wants STEM. Right? Pretty much every kid wants STEM. So you know what admissions officers are sick of? Who wants STEM? Sorry, I'm muted. Somebody else was, here we go. Let's go. Okay. My point being, obviously, listen, I'm making some jokes here, but my point being that if you're an admission officer, you're an international admissions officer, you're trying to build your cohort, you're going to try to get countries that you don't have. You're going to try to get things that, that are interesting to you and whatever. And so if every single kid that applies wants to do physics, engineering, biology, you love a kid that applies that doesn't look like that, right? You love a kid that's a little bit different. The other piece is, I think, and specifically, I'm just going to keep touching on Chinese boys for a second, just to kind of make it real. I'm talking to another friend of mine. This is at a college ranked in the US News and World Report in the top 30, not the top 10. And my friend says to me, Kyle, last year at our school, we didn't take a single Chinese boy with under an 800 math. And they had at least a 700 verbal. So you're talking about a school in the top 30. Again, not Yale, not Princeton, not Harvard, in the top 30, where they weren't even looking at a Chinese boy with under a 1500. And then you'll have in my office, a kid will walk in, Chinese male, with a 1470 and say, Mr. Graham, what about Princeton? And I'm thinking to myself, your file's not even going to be read at, sorry, the construction is going on in the background. Your file's not even going to be read at this top 30 school, and you want number one, right? I'm so sorry about this constraint. It's unpredictable what the days of when they're doing this work. I'll stop there and let Shihan translate. But what's my general point? My general takeaway is that international students do face a tougher bar, right? If you're looking at places that aren't as selective, like places in the top 35 or 40, a lot of schools that are need blind for US students, so they don't care if a kid is full pay, they're need aware for international students, and they'll look to international students to increase revenue, right? So it's harder to get into the top 10, top 15. It might be easier to get into numbers 20 through 40, right? But a lot of this has to do with, and I hope at some point, one of the questions we can get into the game, and Shihan, you can tell me when it's the right time, but just sort of the application strategy, opportunity cost, leveraging assets, and thinking about international students not understanding opportunity costs early, right? And all that discussion. So you can tell me when it's right to go into that, Shihan. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. 他说到呢，咱们这边呢，就是在申请的过程中呢，确实会有一些战略方面需要注意的点。然后他等会儿呢，其实也可以具体讲一讲这个策略啊，就是咱们等会儿看一下 Mary 这边啊，下一个问题是不是可以让他来讲一讲这个策略？就是说呢，他讲的一个例子就是，比如说就是讲到这个中国的国际生在这方面，或者加拿大国际生啊，在做申请的时候，他可能是不是比较有一些卷的专业，还有一些比较难以这个就是比较怎么说呢，就比较卷吧。然后就这个正态分布里面呢，就是很重要的一个男生，尤其中国男孩学的最多的就是那个 STEM，就是理工科类的啊，就数学、科学啊、engineering 啊，这个工程类的。然后呢，这个确实会导致我们的这个竞争非常的白热化，然后它也会导致就是在这个因为就申请的人数多嘛，所以就会导致它的整个的标化的要求呀、成绩的要求呀都会有上升啊。完了以后呢，比如说他说了一个学校，举了一个学校例子，这个学校是前30的一个学校，就不具体说名字啊，但不是说特别难进的那种藤校哈。但是他去年就招过的中国学生里面没有一个是 SAT 低于1500的，数学都是满分的啊，数学不能不是满分，就他不然的话都不看你的这个文书的不看你的整个这个材料的。 所以其实你会发现，就是专业的选择，还有包括对于这个具体的申请的数据流量这些，其实对于我们来说，如果了解这些信息的话，有助于我们去做我们的战略啊，就不会被在这样的一个就是走独木桥的过程中被挤爆吧。所以说这块儿其实他也说，等一会儿可以讲一讲具体应该怎么去布局，能够让咱们的这个孩子更有竞争力吧。
Hi, Miss Grant, can you share more details about like the strategic planning the international student they can use for their application?
Yeah, so that's the strategy you can talk about. You want to share the screen? Oh, you're muted. 他这块儿可以给他做一个联系主持人，因为他可能会有时候会分享屏幕，然后
Oh,
看一下。
okay.
So just a moment, everyone. I'm going to share my screen quickly. I see in the chat someone asked the question, "Why are Chinese boys the least wanted?" Please, it's not that they're the least wanted. It's that the college is thinking about supply and demand, and they're saying, "Look, we're not going to take the entire 12% of our international students. They're not all going to be Chinese, right? They're going to be from various countries around the world. When we do take, let's say specifically a Chinese boy, how strong are the applicants? And they're going to be very strong. They're going to be very, very strong with big testing, big GPAs." And then what I'm saying is that so many of kids in that demographic are going to have similar academic interests and similar profiles of what they want to do at the college. So if you're an admissions rep and you're just every single day reading files of all the kids that want the same major, it's refreshing to see someone who wants something different, right? So that's okay. Now let's switch. I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. So really quickly, everyone, this is the most important information I can share. So this is it, okay? This is gonna take a few minutes. Whitney Soul. I want to cover these 4 things, okay? Quickly. I'll do my best to keep it simple. Shihan, my colleague, who's incredible, has heard me say this a million times. So that's the good thing, is that she knows every word of this back and forwards and is better than me at everything that I do. So it's incredible. Okay, here we go. So, all right, Whitney Soul. Whitney Soul is the Dean of Admission at Penn. Okay, so she used to be at Bowdoin, she's at Penn. And basically all I want to explain to everyone quickly is just to understand, if you are Whitney Soul, if you're the Dean of Admission at Penn, you wake up in the morning feeling pressure to accomplish certain goals in admissions, right? You want to get 50-50 gender balance on campus, you want to get, a range of majors, but you also feel pressure to improve your US News ranking, and you feel pressure to improve your bond rating. Now, if this were a 2-hour talk, I'd jump into deep dive of how do US News rankings work? How does a bond rating work? What is a bond rating? Why do colleges care about it? Why does the dean care about it? But the bottom line is, US News rankings matter because kids care about them. And bond ratings matter because when the college goes to borrow money, their bond rating is going to impact how expensive it is for them to borrow money, okay? Now, when you do a deep dive into these 2 ranking systems, here are 3 things that matter a great deal. Number 1, get more apps. The more applications that Penn gets, so Whitney Soul is at Penn, the more applications that Penn gets, the better it's going to be for her ratings. Number 2, lower admit rate. You want to have a lower admit rate. So that's a good thing. Now, these 2 things are related. If you get a bunch more apps, you're going to end up having a lower acceptance rate. Number 3, get a higher yield. What percentage of kids who are admitted to Penn choose to go to Penn? I think I heard in the intro the name Tess Vara, one of our students last year, one of my students, Tess Vara, was admitted to every Ivy. She chose Stanford. So when Penn admits Tess Vara, and then she chooses to go to Stanford, Penn's acceptance rate goes up, Penn's yield goes down. So right now, just really quickly, right? I know this, I'm trying to do this as quick as I can. Right now, when Penn admits during regular decision, when Penn admits 10 kids, only 4 of them go. So their yield is 40%. That's terrible in the Ivy League. Okay? So they admit 10 kids during regular decision, and only 4 of them say yes to Penn. The others go to Harvard, Stanford, Yale, Columbia, Duke, whatever. So if you're aware of something called early decision is where a kid signs a contract guaranteeing, dear Penn, if you admit me, I'm coming to Penn. So if Penn wants 4 kids during early decision, how many do they have to admit? 4. What's their yield? 100%. Oops. So what am I saying here? I'm saying that if you're a dean of admission like Whitney and you feel pressure, you need to get more apps. So that means you're going to go to every high school that you visit and you're going to say that the process of admissions is holistic. You're going to say everything matters. Essays, letters of rec, community service, interview, all of it. Because you can't say, hi, students at Poly Prep, how you doing? Nice to meet you. Do you have a similar profile to Tesvara? No? Okay, you won't be competitive. If they say that and there's 50 kids in the room and 48 of them look at each other and say, well, I'm not going to get in, I might as well not apply. App numbers go down, Whitney's going to get fired. So they have to, college reps have to get you to apply. That's the game. Get every one of you to apply. Then they're going to get a lower admit rate. And then the yield piece is the more aggressively, if I'm a dean of admission, the more aggressively I lean on early decision, the lower my admit rate's going to be because I won't have to take as many kids, and the higher my yield is going to be. Okay, so if I'm a dean of admission, Dartmouth, Cornell, Penn, early decision is like a blessing to me. Thank you. I love early decision. Okay, so now the fall of senior year. So I'm going to skip for a second. So I covered Whitney Soul. I covered the advantage of ED. You have no idea how advantageous early decision is. You just can't. I could talk to you about it for an hour. You wouldn't fully comprehend how much of a difference it is. So if I'm counseling a kid, I might say, hey, look, Cornell for you is going to be a target, maybe even a likely during early. Cornell for you regular is a entirely out of reach. You're not going to get in, right? And so a lot of schools, places like Penn, are taking upwards of 55% of their class early. There's a thing called targeted defers. I don't have time to get into because we don't have all day, but the bottom line is they'll have some kids that apply early. They'll defer them to regular and take them later. Those kids don't count as early decision admits. They count as regular admits, but they really applied ED. So this number, I believe, is actually closer to about 70% of the class at highly selective schools that are filled early, okay? So now you have a kid coming to my office. It's the fall of senior year. And here are the various rounds of admission. There's restrictive early action, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford. There's early action, Michigan, UVA, Wisconsin, Indiana, Boulder, Oregon, those kinds of places. Then you have early decision round 1. You have early decision round 2. You have RD, I'll call it likely. You have RD others. And then you have a bunch of scenarios. Okay, and the kid's got a bunch of schools up here. Harvard, Brown, Cornell, UChicago, Vanderbilt, let's say Duke, WashU, whatever, right? I'm just making this up. NYU. Okay, so you have a kid coming to my office. They've got these schools on their list. And now what we're trying to decide is in the fall of senior year, what's going to be their application strategy? Are they going to go, if they go early to Yale, pretend Yale's on their list, they go early to Yale. If they do that, they're not allowed to apply ED. It conflicts. You can't go early, restrictive early action to Yale and ED1 to Brown. Can't do it. If they go early to Yale and they don't get in, they're going to get deferred to regular. In which case they're going to say, Mr. Graham, I can't go ED2. I got to see what happens at Yale. Can't apply early decision round 2. So this kid, they might be in my office and I might say, hey, guess what? You've got a 3.95 unweighted GPA. You've got a 1540 SAT. You've got 9 APs, 2 scores of 4, all others 5. White girl, New York, full pay. And I'm going to say to this kid, guess what? Your testing's a little soft as a white girl, and 2 scores of 4 is not going to be very competitive at Yale. And the parents are going to look at me and be angry. What do you mean? This kid's really strong. My little daughter, she's amazing. I'm going to say, I know she is, but Yale's competitive. And if this kid applies ED round 1 to Cornell, pack your bags. I think she's going to Cornell. If she applies ED2 to WashU, I think she's getting in. and she applies ED. You see what I'm saying? So there's all these scenarios, and we have to weigh them out. And what kids do that is a terrible mistake is they say, well, my dream is Yale, or my dream is Harvard. I've always dreamed of it. It's just, come on, I got to take my shot, reach for the stars, aim for the moon, whatever the heck the saying is, right? Reach for the moon, whatever it is. They don't realize that good old Wash U, I was meeting with their director of admission this summer, and Wash U tells me they took 61% of their class early decision. But guess what? That doesn't count, everyone. Targeted defers. The kids that applied early decision that were deferred, that were taken later. So realistically, I'm going to put this at closer to 75% is my guess for the percentage of kids at Wash U that applied ED. So when this little superstar here who thinks they're great, and let's say they're in BC Calculus as a senior, right? And I always have to tell kids, at my last school, there was an entire section of 9th graders who were taking BC Calculus. So when you're a senior and you're a BC Calculus, you're very impressive at your little school, but not at, not at some schools. Okay, so the point is, and I know this is a lot of information, what I'm saying is when this kid applies early to Harvard, everyone in their extended family feels like, well, of course, they're gonna take their shot at their dream. That's what we've done. When they miss, if they miss Harvard, it's not just that they missed Harvard, they just missed Cornell, they missed Vandy, they missed Wash U, they missed their best shot at Duke. And all those places, when they add them down here, they're not happening. They're highly unlikely to happen because these places have filled their classes early. There are no spots left. And the only kids that get in regular to these schools are Tesvara. And if you all want to compete with Tesvara, best of luck to you. Okay, she's like she's not a normal kid. She's the LeBron James of academics. So anyway, this is what I'm getting at, is this is the game. And then so you figure, well, okay, well, Mr. Graham, what you're making very clear is this application strategy is really important, right? In calibrating, like how high can I aim? Can I take a shot? Should I go ED1 to Cornell or should I go ED1 to Duke? If I go ED1 to Duke, do you think I can get in ED2 to Vanderbilt? How all this works is then we build an asset inventory. And we look at things like your GPA and your rigor of curriculum. Sorry, I'm typing fast. GPA, rigor of curriculum, ethnicity, testing, citizenship, advancement, athletics, arts, all the things that make up your app. We take your data, okay, kid data, and then we sort of build out a profile, a risk profile. How likely are you to get in if you apply ED1 to this school versus if you apply ED1 to that school? And if you really if some kid that I'm working with has, let's say they love Wash U, and I think they're going to make it ED2 at Wash U, well, then I can tell that family, if you were on the fence between two options, ED1, you can afford to take on a little bit more risk because we really like your ED2 option at Wash U. Anyway, this is a ton of information, but what am I getting at here? Just recap, if I was talking to my daughter who's 4 years old, her name's Darby, I would say, Darby, it's really beneficial to colleges to take kids' early decision, okay? And she'd go, yes, Daddy. And I go, okay, so it's beneficial to them. Therefore, they effectively go on sale early. She'd say, okay, that makes sense. And so you want to be very smart about where you try to apply early, because if you miss, you missed out on the sale price, right? And you got to be very thoughtful about leveraging your assets. And if a kid is younger, so if you're on the call and you're a younger family, you're trying to develop your assets. You're trying to develop your assets and build out your profile in a manner that's going to be attractive to colleges. If you're an older kid and you kind of are what you are, you're trying to say, given my reality, like a classic example would be a kid that identifies as a Black male. And I'm thinking of a population density map of the United States, and I'm thinking of, Los Angeles, Chicago, Miami, New York, DC, Philadelphia. If that student who identifies as a Black male applies to schools that are more densely populated, being a Black male is going to be less rare, right? More kids who are Black men are going to want to also apply to major cities. If that student is willing to look at Dartmouth in Hanover, New Hampshire, it's going to be easier to get in. But the student will say to me, but I don't want to go to Hanover. And I'll say, exactly. That's why they want you. Like, it's an efficient market, right? It's supply and demand. Okay. That's the world's longest response for Shihan to translate. Hopefully, folks on the call, there are enough of you that kind of understand that what I'm saying, that this makes sense. But Shihan, do your best shot, and thank you for letting me ramble for 20 minutes. But the point is, this is how the game works, folks. This is not, it's not like, did you write a good essay? Nope. Yeah, I don't even see that down here, right? Essay matters in certain contexts. Essay matters to signal ethnicity. Essay matters to signal Pell eligibility. Essay matters to give context to some other factor we're trying to leverage. But in and of itself, I would make the case that the essays exist to give the room full of 50 kids hope, to make them feel like I'm going to apply to Penn because my parents got divorced and I'm going to write about that. And that makes me special. And the college is like, yeah, we read your file in 60 seconds. So how much time do you think we put on the essay? Right? It's just a different. So again, don't do a bad job in your essay. You don't want to write USC stinks in your essay. Don't write that. But I don't want you to think that if you have a 3.3 GPA and you have kind of like soft courses and you're whatever, that you're going to write the winning essay and get into Duke. That's not a thing. It doesn't happen. Okay, I'm going to stop screen sharing. Or Shihan, do you want the screen?
Yes, screen please.
Okay.
Yeah. 他这边呢讲到就举了几个例子，讲一讲就是申请的策略啊。就首先讲到了那个关于咱们的这个招生官他的一个动机，就是你想啊，不管是宾大的招生官，任何学校的招生官，他其实注重的是几个指标。就对于招生官来说，他需要部门运营的好，他需要这个整个学校的排名高，然后需要借款利率低，他需要做到的几个点，就是有几个因素是他需要去努力的。第一个是他需要保证学校的申请的人数啊到达一个比较好的水平，申请人数高了以后呢，这个学校的相当于它的录取率就低了，就这个也会影响到它的排名。第三个是入学率，就这个是任何一个招生官都特别特别在乎的。那么对于这个数据来说的话呢，它可能有时候就会有这个对sorry Kyle did you
I was looking at the email question. Sorry. Prepping for the next question. My bad.
No worries。然后呢，他说到了这个，这3个指标的话呢，会影响这个这个学校的走向。那么对于他来说，想要可能拿到更多的 app， 他会跟你说，就是我们什么都看啊，就是我们所有的这个不管是文书呀，不管是标化呀、成绩啊这些都看，推荐信啊都看。这样的话呢，他就会有更多的人愿意来申请这个学校。有些时候确实家长如果知道这个学校很难申，他就不申了，其实会影响这个学校的申请人数的从而会让他录取率提高。所以这是一方面的。第二方面的话呢，就是他的这个入学率就是他除了他的录取率低申请人数多，他的入学率也非常非常的重要。确保入学率呢，其实对于他这个招生官来说很重要的一个是利用好异地。就大家知道早生是什么？就是我跟这个学校会签订协议，就如果说你要我就一定会来所以说它是一个绑定的。那么早生其实对于大学来说是非常有优势的，因为他如果说想要招一个学生，他可能在RD阶段的话呢，他就需要去祈求这个学生来。就比如说我们去年这个 Tasvar 这个孩子，他是被所有的藤校录取，他最后就聚了基本上所有的藤校去了 Stanford 所以说其实呢，对于宾大来说，他在录取像 Stanford 这样的学生的过程中是有难度的，所以他希望在ED阶段就把他想要的孩子录进来。其实这个对大学来说很有这个吸引力。这个就会影响到我们对于ED的一个战略，因为大学特别看重ED，所以我们在申请这个大学的时候，我们要注重ED对我们的优势，对我们申请者的一个优势所以的话呢，我们如果能够选定ED的学校，然后呢，在这个过程中更好的去管理我们的风险，其实我们战略中很重要的一个组成部分。那么对他来说呢，他讲到了就是我们的不同的轮次。那么 REA 是哈佛、耶鲁、斯顿、普林斯顿、Stanford。然后呢，这个 ED1、ED2有2个轮次，还有 RD 有1个轮次。那么其实你在 REA 比如说4个大藤的时候，其实你是错失了 ED1和 ED2 机会，就它中间还是会有一个机会成本的问题所以说你在布置你的战略的时候，你一定要想着就是可能你在 RD 的保底校你真的是有多么的接受，就你就认了。你如果你冲了哈佛，然后你最后确实错失了 ED1、ED2 的这个2个打折轮，就是引号打折轮，因为大学在这个过程中，它降低了录取标准来录取孩子，并且呢，它的录取的这个人数也是相当可观的，大概有70%到80%的学生都在ED轮被录取了。所以的话呢， 在这个过程中，如果说，哎，你要冲了 REA，冲了4个藤校之一，你错失了ED1、ED2，那你得确保你在 RD 阶段能录到那个学校是你真正能接受的，那么你就去冲。否则的话呢，那你就真的是要去权衡利弊得失，看一下我是不是在ED1轮，比如说冲一个小藤更稳一些，或者冲一个其他的学校，在ED2轮我可能我会 OK 什么样的学校，也会去就是反观我就ED1轮能冲多高。所以说它这个是一个整个的一个从下而上的这么一个布局的策略啊。所以说对于我们来说的话，确实在准备这个学校的时候，这个名单的时候，可能更多不是说这个名单是什么，而是更多是我在什么轮次升什么学校，什么时候申请什么学校，这个其实很有学问的，非常非常讲究的。所以呢，它也是会总结了一个就是叫做资产管理的这么一个资产的列表。然后呢，这个资产列表里面的话呢，也有这个像 GPA、像 rigor、像那个像 ethnicity，然后呢，像那个 testing 啊，这个就是种族啊，这个标化呀，然后就是这个课程难度啊，还有包括他刚刚讲到的捐赠，还有包括体育和艺术，就这些都是他一个资产列表。然后你在这个过程中，你是跟大学进行一个交易的，就大学在跟你就是你的资产就给大学提供什么样的价值，大学才会录你。所以它这个不是说一个择优录取，它是一个需求匹配的这么一个东西啊。所以说，那么对于藤校来说，当然他的需求也是很高的，就他肯定是要看重这个学生真的是 GPA 满分，然后 SAT 接近满分，这是标配。什么叫标配？就是你没有这个配置的话，你根本就不会进入到人家视野。但你有了这个标配之后，你还要一些其他东西来加持。所以的话呢，在这个过程中，你是跟大学其实是在进行一场交易的。I did it.
非
I
常
can
有
recite it.
Thank you, Miss Graham and Miss Shihan for your elaboration on this topic. It's very eye-opening. 这是从一个非常detail 的一个数据的一个角度去分析我们这个战略部署那我们就在下一个问题呢，就是一个很多人非常关心的关于课外活动的这个问题。Miss Graham, let's talk about a little bit about extracurriculars. We know that extracurriculars play a big role in application. What level of involvement or achievement are Ivy League schools looking for? And can you explain how top students strategically choose and balance their activities?
Yeah. So, when your file gets read, you get put through a rubric. So when selective schools get 50,000, 100,000 applications, whatever the number is, you can't just read a file and then just remember the feeling you got when you read it. You have to quantify the file. So you read the file, you give it a number. Right now, a lot of schools are actually using AI to do their initial screening. So if you apply to a fancy US business school, undergraduate business school, and you have a 3.3 GPA, you might become what's called just a short read deny. A short read deny is your GPA and your testing aren't strong enough to make it to the next step. So you're short read deny, done. The reason I'm thinking about this is I don't want people to think that if you're an extracurricular champion, so earlier we talked about athletics. If you're good enough, that's an extracurricular. If you're good enough that a college coach wants you and they want you badly, you're going to be good for you, right? But if you are colleges don't want well-rounded kids. Colleges don't want well-rounded kids. They want a well-rounded class. So if they're going to bring in 1,000 students to a particular college, they want that 1,000 students to include a really good baseball player, an incredible, pianist, a great cellist, a great actor, somebody who's really into computer science. Like they don't need each kid to do athletics, community service, computer science, math, history, English. They typically like angular kids who are really, really strong. So when I think about extracurriculars, I think about how is the kid in front of me going to add value to the college to which they're applying? And if you're a full pay student, and I can't blow up schools because I see it's being recorded, but if you are a full pay student and you apply to, I'm thinking of a school ranked, in the top 50 in the US, Just being full pay is all you need. You're full pay, you apply early decision. I don't really care what your extracurriculars are. You can go home and play Fortnite every night. If you're full pay and you got a respectable GPA, you're going to be good. As you move up the pecking order of US News rankings, if you apply to, I don't know, Duke, and you're an extracurricular champion at your school, you kind of do everything, leader, super involved, founder of a club, this, that, whatever, but you have a 3.5 GPA, and your friend has a 4.0 GPA and does nothing, I'd rather have the 4.0 any day of the week. Because you can sort of, when you're filling out the application, you can make it look, you can sort of make it look like you're doing some things. You can't make it look like your GPA is higher, right? It's not, you can't, there's nobody that's GPA optional at the college level, right? So you gotta, as a family, when you're thinking about how to spend precious time, you all have limited bandwidth, right? Certain amount of time in the day. I wanna put that time into GPA. I wanna put that time into testing, making sure that my testing is strong. And then as far as extracurriculars, I have 2 little girls. You can kind of vaguely see their photos in the back up there. When they're getting older and going through this process, I'm going to try to be paying attention to what are their naturally emerging interests and then try to support that. I mean, there's certainly some strategy that comes into play. So let's give a poly prep example. We have one of the best high school volleyball coaches in the United States. Incredible. He's a legend in the field. If she's going to pick a sport, and I'm thinking, well, lots of kids play soccer. It's going to be hard to distinguish yourself as a soccer player. But we have this uniquely, really impressive volleyball coach who's got a Rolodex. That's, you can call any coach in the nation and they take his call immediately. I'd rather her be around that program. We have one of the best high school debate programs in the United States. We routinely have national champion debaters who go off to very fancy colleges. So if she was like, Dad, I don't know, I was thinking about for an extracurricular, I was going to do either whatever or debate, I'd be thinking, yeah, give debate a try, because I see a pathway to where that's a nationally recognized program that you might be able to sort of ride the coattails of that into some sort of accolade. So does that mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is extracurriculars are often overemphasized. And people going back to the idea of the Penn Dean of Admission or the Ivy League admission officer coming in and needing every kid to apply, they really pump up the fact that extracurriculars can carry the day, when in reality, when you get your rubric score at a college, in my experience, the parts of that rubric that get the most number of points are going to be the academically oriented points. So it's GPA, rigor of curriculum, standardized testing. That sort of drives the day. Even the rhythm of how we talk about kids in admissions is you'll say, this kid's an academic 10, personal 2, right? And that would be shorthand among colleagues and admission officer in an admissions office to sort of talk about a kid's rating. So, right, so you're on the phone, hey, I got a kid, yeah, hockey player, yeah, academic 10, personal 2, from Connecticut. Yep, coach gives him a B rating for his how good the kid is as an athlete. And then on the other end of the phone, the person can hear those stats and then very quickly know, are we going to go there? Are we not going to go there? So, and again, even me just saying that's how we talk with each other just emphasizes again that I'm not saying, like, I can't show you this because it's being recorded. I would have shown you if it wasn't recorded, but I was going to show you a text with a friend of mine that's an admission officer.
Stop the recording.
All right, well, he's an admission officer at a ridiculously selective college, right? You've all heard of the college. And so I will text him and say, hey, and then give him quick, rapid fire bullet points about a kid. But the text took me 8 seconds to write, right? It's this GPA, this demographic, and to the question, is race or ethnicity still going to matter post affirmative action? Yes, it is. And we can have a whole session. We could have an entire session about how the colleges are going to do that. Well, anyway, I sent a quick text, 15 seconds, GPA, testing, demographic, financial status. Hey, do you think this makes sense to go ED1? My friend writes back, you see the little dots, on the iPhone, you see the dots, dot, 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 he's typing. My friend writes back and says, that'll be low even during ED. And I'm thinking, okay, great. Now I know not to waste our ED at that particular school, right? So how am I answering this question about extracurriculars? What I'm saying is, as far as how a family focuses their efforts, you want to focus on academics. Of course, that's the most important thing. If you happen to be blessed in such a way, I was talking last night, this is a random thing, and somebody's going to take this and run with it. Last night, I was having dinner with my former boss. He used to work at the US Olympics for a long, long time. He was our head of school at Poly. He just finished his tenure as head of school. And he was like, Kyle, with crew, like rowing crew, if you set up a little iPhone of yourself and you hit record and you're a girl and you erg a 2K in 7:45, you can go wherever you want. Go wherever you want if you can hit that time. So let's unpack what he just said. What he said is, if you are a girl and you could erg a 2K in 7:45, whatever he said, I think that was the time he said, that college coaches at places like Harvard are going to want you badly. Then he says, that's not easy to do. It's not an easy time to hit, right? So it can't just be that you row crew. Hey, my daughter rows crew. She's really passionate about it. She's writing her essay about it. She's got a coach. She goes to all these different regattas over the weekends and she rows. No one cares. They care if she hits 7:40. So it's kind of understanding. Or a kid at Poly. Hey, I'm going to do debate. And Mr. Graham said they have this nationally recognized program. Okay, if you end up being one of our debaters who's 5th in the United States in debate, you better not apply to Harvard, because numbers 1 through 4 are probably in that pool. So being 5th isn't getting any attention. So if you're going to leverage extracurriculars, you got to be real. Most kids are just leveraging academics, demographic, GPA, testing, ethnicity, advancement, all that kind of stuff. And athletics are just, our extracurriculars are sort of, yeah, you do some things. They don't want kids to just go home and play Fortnite every night. They want you to do something. But I'd way rather you focus on GPA if I can than. Anyway, longest answer of all time. I love this stuff. So you gotta give me a little bit of. I would just.
You can, yes, definitely. And Kyle is gonna be in China. Yes, just like Tina mentioned in the chat that he's gonna be in China starting next Thursday. So stay tuned.这个他刚刚讲到了咱们的这个具体的这个就是关于课外活动这块儿，他觉得课外活动呢确实是，对于 GPA 来说，跟 CPA 相比的话，课外活动其实没有那么重要啊。他认为，因为很多时候很难量化这个课外活动，但你能量化 GPA，你能量化标化啊，就这些的话，其实对于你的申请的过程中还是更占一个权重比更大的这么一个东西。那么课外活动其实大家也讲到了，不管是领导力啊，还是说咱们的这个体育啊、艺术啊这个特长，就你得好到一个程度，就是你得是，就是说能够引起别人注意，让人觉得这个资产别人想要嘛。他刚刚说的这个资产交换啊，所以说对于你的这个投入在课外活动时间，那肯定是会是不同的，你要达到不同的水平，你会投入不同的时间。然后的话呢，这个咱们说这个，其实在整个的一个过程中，成绩啊，实打实的这个成绩还是非常非常的重要的啊，就对于我们的申请的学生来说啊，完了以后呢，他刚刚也讲到了，就比如说啊，就是你说我喜欢划船，那这个东西可能就是一个课外活动了啊，但是你要这个课外活动真的在这个申请过程中占一个比例，或者它能够占一个权重，就是人家真的是看得到说你这个非常好的话，那你必须在2000米这个划船机上你得达到这个时间，就什么7分多少分多少的这么一个时间，就是你确实得有那个水平，你得是实打实的有那个交付啊，你在这个过程中你才真正的具备竞争力。啊，所以呢，他认为就是很多时候领导力啊，或者这些东西，它相对来说没有那么办法被量化。所以，与其你花特别多的时间在这个上面，他的建议是你还不如多花点时间在学业上面，就把这个标配做好啊。对，
Thank you, Mr. Grant and Shihan 老师。Mr. Grant, you just mentioned the academic and leadership excellence. They are really important in making a student stand out. I'm wondering, like from your experience, how does polyprep spur students in this area?
how do we support students in standing out?
In like leadership, excellence, like how to help them to help them. Yeah.
The other night, I'm a storyteller, so I apologize. I'm going to keep telling stories. The other night, I was on the phone with a good friend, two friends of mine that I talk to all the time. One of them used to work admissions at Penn. The other one used to work admissions at Stanford, right? And we were talking about when a student, when you try to create an impressive kid in a lab, meaning that you're sort of sitting at a table going, all right, well, what extracurriculars are we going to do to look impressive? It ends up being easy to sort of sniff out, right? So I think this is kind of a cop-out answer, but what I'm trying to say is the way to stand out is to be early decision in the right pool. So if you give me a kid, here's a kid, it's my little stress ball. This is a kid, it's more about having them apply early decision to the right school where they're going to be where their profile makes sense, instead of taking the kid and going, if I can just make him do the right extracurriculars, they'll get into Yale. To stand out at Yale is really hard. It just is. It's just very hard. Like, again, I keep talking about Tesvara. I don't want to blow up her whole, I can't like tell you about her, what her story is. It's just it's her personal life, right? But like I had a kid, here's a kid in California that I worked with. She was valedictorian. She had a 1600. So right off the bat, okay, she's very strong. She was really interested in writing. She entered a competition in the state of California. There were 37,000 participants. And it was this sort of like theatrical writing or some sort of competition. She won. And then the school where I was working at the time was an all-girls private school. She organized the first ever women's history conference, but not to look impressive, everyone. It's that she cared a lot about the topic. She cared a lot about empowering women and trying to do all this. So she was just, she was incredible. She had a very, very, very compelling personal story, right? So her narrative, when you read it, made you want to root for her. And then how do you stand out? This is the most important thing I'm going to say about how to stand out. When you submit materials to a school, you submit your letters of recommendation. So here's your app. Your app includes your Common App, right? Demographic information, first name, last name, home address. Then you have your personal statement, which is called your Common App essay, right? The personal statement. You have your supplemental essays. And then usually your school is going to submit three main things. They're going to submit your first teacher letter, your second teacher letter, recommendation letter, and then your school counselor letter. When I'm on the phone with my friend at Yale, a guy named John Yee, again, please don't blow up if this is on recording. I'm not trying for this to go out and go public, right? But
Mary, pause it. Pause the recording.
OK。
就是你在这个在这个优势的过程中哈，你就在寻找优势的过程中，很重要的是要找到学校这个支持体系。这个学校知识体系指的是你周围的推荐信，尤其到了一个非常高级别的，就藤校啊、大藤啊这些级别的，它这个取决于就不同的学生的这个区分度呢，推荐信是很重要的一块。推荐信里面呢还有分两块推荐信，第一个推荐信叫做老师的推荐信，第二个叫做大学升学导师的推荐信。他说大学升学导师推荐信的通常情况下都是比较的这个相对来说都是比较的好的，因为毕竟升学导师啊，他其实就那个学生cohort的那些学生，他其实写的都会比较好。他说一般就是7分和10分的一个差别啊，但是老师推荐信就会真的是会显现出不一样的这个部分来，尤其是他刚才讲到的，就是咱们说的啊，他之前教过学生，他举了几个例子，他之前教过学生，之前就是不管是哈佛、西湖还是 Poly 的学生，就是老师在写推荐信的时候，可能也就是那一句话，第一句话就开篇，就是这个学生我从来没有见过，在我多少年的职业生涯里面，我没有见过比这个孩子更优秀的孩子，或者就这个孩子，他就有一个老师说，我每天上班我都感觉使命感，充满了使命感，因为我觉得我课堂这个孩子他的这个天赋是国家级的宝藏 所以他就是会有这种学生会让老师感觉就跟这样的学生共事是非常具有激励性的和启发性的，就是对他职业生涯来说是一种颠覆式的这种认知的这样的孩子，所以他会得到老师的这个非常强的一个背书和助力。那么这种推荐信当然来说是非常非常重要的，但是很多时候你在这个申请的过程中，就是学校在看学生的时候，他也不喜欢是那个孩子就只是一个纯学霸，咱们中国说的，就在图书馆里面埋头苦读的，然后两耳不闻窗外事的，他是希望这个孩子能够就是建立社区，能够有一些领导力就除了就是学术方面的就非常的这个有深造之外呢，能够也是比较活的这么一个孩子不仅仅只是说真的两耳只读这个一心只读圣贤书的这种孩子所以说在这方面呢，其实你很多时候还是需要有一些内部的信息，就比如说他这边他其实是会就在 Poly 咱们经常会去跟一些不同的学校的大学的大学招生官直接对话的，然后在这个对话过程中呢，也很好的去了解这个高校它对于学生的这么一个就他的一个选择的一些选拔的标准，以及他的空缺，还包括他的整个的一个对于推荐信的这个权重比例这些，所以每个学校可能会也是因学校而异，所以你有这样的一些信息和资讯，其实对于我们做决定和对我们在进入这个申请季能够去很好的预测申请结果来说是非常非常重要的。
Thank you, Miss Grant, Miss Shihan. I know Miss Grant has a meeting later on. So now we just it's time for a Q&A session. Let's open the floor to our community. And Miss Graham and Miss Shihan, would you guys like to pick up some questions from our community?
Yeah, Kyle, do you want to? I think you answered some of them, right?
Yeah, I'm trying my best. So we'll go through quickly. So let's see. How would you recommend Chinese kids, especially Chinese boys, focus on how to stand out when they're all excellent at academics? There's always nuance to how excellent they are at academics. So gosh, I don't know how do I keep this short? When you type in a chat, when a parent says their kid is excellent at academics, typically means they have good grades. But when I look at a transcript, my level, again, just when this is what your life is, when I look at a transcript, it's very different than when a parent looks at their kid's transcript. So if you give me a kid who wants to apply to, let's say, MIT, one of my best friends, he works very closely with the former director of admissions at MIT. And they would say, look, we kind of expect that kids exhaust their high school math curriculum by junior year. By the time they finish junior year, they're done with their math. There's no more math for them to take. And that they're doing either like an individualized study or something. They shouldn't just be in with the regular cohort of kids in the most advanced math class senior year. So if I look at a kid who's at, well, let's use Harvard Westlake, because back in my old school. If I had a kid that was in BC calculus as a senior at almost every high school in America, that's really, really, really strong, but not for MIT. It's just not going to be. That kid's parent would look at that transcript and say, well, look, they've got excellent academics, look at big testing, look at big grades in their BC calculus. I wouldn't look at it the same way. So the parent, when you're asking the question, you're thinking that the edge is going to be when they figure out the right extracurricular. I'm going to say the edge is going to be when they would have taken BC Calc younger. See what I'm saying? So it's never what you think. It's not. Anyway, I'm not trying to be a contrarian and be a jerk and be like the angry miserly guy on the call. It's like, you don't know what you're doing, but there's no little guidebook like here's the guidebook to do all these are the extracurriculars that get you into Duke. That's just not how it works. You have to offer value to Duke within you're competing against your demographic. That's the first thing. Like if you're a white girl, you're competing against white girls. If you're a Chinese boy, you're competing against Chinese boys. If you're up against your demographic, right? That's kind of how it goes. And then if you're a basketball player, you're up against the other basketball players they're trying to admit and take. But with younger kids, anyway, I could go on all day, but yeah, that's, I mean, let's call that one. It's tough to distinguish yourself extracurricularly. In terms of, there are schools, and I'm not going to blow this up on a record. Like, look, some of this is proprietary to me. Like I can't, I'm giving away a lot of secret sauce here, but there's some stuff that I'm not giving away, right? There's some stuff that is like, this particular school needs this thing. And I'm not putting that out there in a newspaper or putting that on a web recording. Are you kidding me? No, I'm sorry. I love you all, but I have to maintain an edge as much as I can, right? So I'm being very transparent, but there's a little bit I hold back. Let's see. What's the difference between requirements, MIT and Harvard? They're both ridiculously tough. So they're both difficult. Is there any strategy for R2K3 girl? I'm not sure I understand R2K3, US passport, Chinese study. As far as when you have specific questions like, well, okay, Chinese passport, studying in the US, background is Hong Kong. In general, I would say to you that international admission officers, their dream goal is that kids, let's talk about specifically, Chinese students, let's say. They don't want kids to come to the college, go in the dining hall and be at a table speaking Mandarin with one another and not engaging with the sort of the rest of the community. So when we've had kids come to Poly Prep, all of our international students that have come here so far have gone to top 15 colleges. They've done remarkably well in the college game. And I think a big part of that, and I tell this to families on the front end when they're applying to us, is I say, my friends, they're looking for kids, international students, who are going to come in and become part of the fabric of the college community and not just go to their dorm and do their thing and go to kind of an affinity group with other international students and hang out. They want you to be interacting with kids that are totally dissimilar to you. And their assumption is going to be, in some cases, that if you've already come to, let's say, a US independent school like Poly Prep, you're already doing that, right? You can't come to Poly. You couldn't exist here by just interacting with other international students. You'd have to be engaged with all different types of kids from different backgrounds. And if you've been doing that here, you're probably going to be able to do that pretty easily at the college level. So that, I think that's a little edge, right? When that kid is being discussed at a highly selective college. Seems like Poly Prep is low international student percentage compared to their top high schools. Is Poly Prep planning to admit more? That's intentional. Look, so here's our deal. There are some independent schools that go high volume. If I'm going to say something, okay, here you go. My colleague Shihan, who happens to be on this call, and I would say this if she weren't on this call, she's in my career one of the most impressive people I've ever been around in terms of just overall top to bottom as a human being, as a professional, as a parent, just in every regard. Shihan is world class. So what she has done is she's built this program where a very small group of kids come in who on the front end are extremely well qualified. These are strong kids. Our first international student that we brought to campus in 9th grade, he won the overall award for the top 9th grader. He won the overall award for the top artist. He was the star in our musical theater productions. We helped him guide him, hey, keep doing theater because that's going to stand out in the college process. He did really well. So Shihan has brought in students that are incredibly impressive, but then every single week there's cultural programming for those kids. They're on a call with each other on Zoom all throughout the pandemic, every week, every Thursday night, 6 o'clock. They're going to shows. They're interacting with prominent Poly people. They are. So however impressive Poly is, the group of international students, specifically Chinese students with Shihan, that's like the elite of the elite group. And what I think is the coolest thing about it is those kids, when they go off into the world, that network, oh my God, they are to say they're like family is an understatement. That is a group of kids that are going to help each other in any way they can. So we don't want that to be 100 kids because we can't maintain that kind of white glove concierge level service. Right now they have they have their deans, they have all their support at Poly, but then they have Shihan. It's special. It's kind of, I would argue that of all the things I love about Poly, the thing I'm most proud of is watching Shihan build what she has built. I think it's the most impressive thing. And there's a lot of things I compare to Harvard Westlake, you know, such a powerful, fancy school, and things I aspire to build up to be like them. This is one thing where I would say right to their faces, you don't have this, you don't have Shihan. You don't have anybody like her. Your kids are just coming in and they gotta get thrown into the school community. We have this. It's yeah. Anyway, so I have to go. I'm so sorry. Shihan, I gotta tag off too.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've got to take. I'm 33 minutes late for a meeting out there. They're waiting for me. I gotta go. Okay. So
Thank you so much, Miss Grant, for being here
Thank
today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Thank you so much. I wish you have a wonderful trip in China.
Yes，对，那不然我就用中文讲吗？Tina 还是
可以，那个诗涵，我觉得现在咱们就都可以。我觉得就等会儿刚刚你把那个Kyle 的那个翻译一下，然后我觉得接下来如果大家有时间的话，就可以把麦克风打开，把那个摄像头打开，我们就可以再交流个10分钟，好不好？
对，好的。
对，好。
是的，对，咱们刚刚讲到就是对国际生这块，就是我们确实是想扩，但是扩也是有扩的有限啊，也扩的有限，因为我们现在是11个学生嘛，然后我们可能会今年再招5到6个孩子啊，就大概会接近20，但可能不会再超过20。对，然后我觉得就是可能也是我在刚开始做这个项目，就2019年的时候做这个项目，然后现在能够做到，就是我觉得就是家长也很满意，然后学生之间也很紧密，然后我们这学生走向也都是前15的大学，就我觉得还是有点小小的成就感的，然后就很高兴，就是在咱们美国的学校里面有一个中国的社群，然后我觉得能够有这种学校领导的一个认可啊，就看刚刚他也非常非常 nice 啊，就说很对我们的项目感到很骄傲，所以我觉得这些也是激发着我们更好的往前进，更好去支持咱们的国际生啊。然后托福的话呢，我们一般9年级的话大概就是100分啊，100分，但不是说就不到这个分就一定不能进，就每个其实孩子都不一样哈，一个也不是分数能够决定的，但100分的学生或100加托福的学生，通常情况下呢，会对咱们学校的这个课程体系啊各方面会更加得心应手一些，因为毕竟还是一个就是没有 ESL 的学校嘛，然后我们是可以有 host family 的，然后我们的寄宿家庭呢也是我们亲自找的，然后也有很多都是我们自己的家庭，然后我们还有一个寄宿的这个项目，就是可以住在这个宿舍里面，住在这个 house 里面，然后我们统一管理的啊，所以说我们也是有点走这种寄宿的走读模式，然后我们的寄宿家庭确实非常好，我们有一个孩子住在我们学校校董家，然后得到的资源呢，还有包括整个的一个获取的可能性啊，这方面的都是非常非常顶尖的，
好，那其他家长还有些什么问题可以就是提出来，然后我们 Tina 和郑毅老师还有我们诗涵老师都在。
对，大家就可以直接把麦克风打开吧，我们再留几分钟。对，现在时间也不早了，我知道在国内。大家有什么问题
Tina 你好，那个诗涵老师你好，我叫菲亚娜，我们现在在韩国，是这样的，我想问一下，就是之前那个开也讲到，就是国际生大概是12%，的那个录取率，然后那个学校也是像集邮一样，就是集各种就是全世界不同地方的申请学生。那我就想问一下，一般就是说比如说我们现在孩子还小，才小学3年级，但我们可以不就是全世界都可以住嘛？就说一般来说，就高中的时候，从哪个地方哪个地区申请会相对来说比较容易呢？
申请大学吗？有呢。
大学。
对，申请大学确实是美高还是会有更具优势的。这个逻辑很简单，就是近水楼台先得月。对于美本来说，他也希望知道美高的这个底细，因为就太远了，其实它也有一个信息差。另外的话，可能就是团队和团队之间合作就会弱一些，指的就是升学顾问和学校招生官，这个都是有对接的。你像我们学校 Kyle 他每天打电话的都是这些 大学的这些招生的主任这些，所以他得到的信息可能跟咱们在中国的学校或者在其他地方的一些学校，他们能够 access 到的资源是不太一样的。所以美本的学校，它对于美高的学校之间的这种 feeder 的项目会更多一些所以总的来说，就是它还是会更具有优势，而且信赖程度和信赖成本，信赖程度会更高，信赖成本会更低一些。因为毕竟它有 track record 的嘛，不同的美高跟这个大学之间，它都有它的一个就是成绩单，那它肯定是持续的送优质的学生进到这个大学，这个大学才会愿意把更多的名额呀留给这个高中，所以他们之间肯定是有这种历史的这种关系在里面的，也会确实是真正的可能受益于咱们的学生。另外呢，我们学校我们的一个点其实是我们中国学生比较少，这个是我比较 intentionally 想去 maintain 的这么一个东西，因为我觉得中国学生同质化的现象会比较多一些，就刚刚他讲到的什么男孩升 STEM 的多这种的，就这个我确实是看到这个现象，一个也是我们人口比较多，而且我们的中国的整个的一个教育体系和这个教育的机制会比较容易生产出或者 produce 出比较类似的 talent 和比较类似的学生的背景，所以其实对我们来说，把这个差异化给他在前期就给他做好，是我们就有意图的把他招进来的时候，我们就不会招同质的类型的学生，因为这样的话他们相互就会卷起来。其实我们是希望能够有一方净土，让孩子去做自己，因为家长花很多的心力把孩子就是这么远的送到美国来，其实我还是有那个初衷，就希望他们能够感受到一个真正的美国的文化呀，国际的一个视野呀，然后就不要是在以过去的中国的那个思维再去竞争或者再去进行一些就是内耗或者是这种的。就我们上次跟 Tina 就跟咱们的 MacB Coaching 一起做的那些活动，我觉得当时孩子说了一句话，他说学艺术是我反内卷的一种方式。我们去年去艺术的这个孩子去威廉姆斯学院嘛，非常非常优秀的一个男孩，我感觉他都要在 Williamstown 当市长当 mayor 了，就非常 well 就是 connected，然后 community builder，非常有情怀，讲话就是都是那种深入浅出，而且教育家长很有一套，所有的家长听完他的话之后都醍醐灌顶，知道该怎么跟孩子相处，特别会做 therapy， 特别会做家庭教育。我们几个孩子都有这样的特征，就特别的向内看吧，特别向内看，然后讲出来的话就是跟小大人一样。就这些孩子，他其实内心是非常坚定的内核的，他内核很强，然后他也会很知道自己要什么，他的生命状态是很自洽的，就他真的是在绽放，他的能量是在影响着，积极的影响他身边的人。就这种对我来说是一个看到这个状态，其实是对我来说也是很有灵感的，而且他对身边的人来说，对于他的原生家庭，对于他未来的这个整个可能性来说，它都是一个刚刚好的一个状态。我其实想要去打造这种刚刚好的一个比较自洽的这么一个状态，因为我们中国太多的学生就是把很多的时间资源投资在一些可能根本都不是自己想做的事情上面。就这个其实会不仅仅只是说你现在可能就是没有办法长期主义，然后更多是你在短期的这个过程中，你也没有办法获得你想获得的效益反而牺牲掉了很多你可能根本不应该去牺牲的健康呀、身心的健康呀，和同学的这种建立的社交呀、友谊啊，所以我们学生之间的氛围、家庭之间氛围就特别好，就大家就是不是他说像 family 一样，就是也像 cousin 是一样，也像是那种就是因为我们自己在成长过程中，我们知道那种感受，就是当你跟一个志同道合的人，在很早期的阶段，人生早期阶段就很好的建立深层次的链接，这种财富和这样的一种人脉，它对你未来的人生是一个很大的加持。就这个是我们坚信的，所以我们在做这个项目的过程中，很多其实真的是我觉得是一个信念吧。就是这个是可能真的是跟很多其他学校不太一样的，因为他们也不了解中国学生，他们也不了解咱们中国学生的需求，他们也不了解我们文化中不被翻译的那些部分，所以这个恰恰是我要去做的。我觉得在这个行业中需要有这样的一些角色去完成这样的使命，然后更好去链接不同的这个全球，然后去更好的提升一个孩子真正的一个视野，因为他有了中国的这个世界，有了美国的视野，他有中间这个旅途，他在韩国这个所有这些背景，让他打开的是第3个、第4个、第5个，完全就超越咱们认知的一个世界、一个视角。 就这个东西真的是可以引领未来的。就你能看到，就真的是最幸福的一件事情，就是你能看到未来。就你在做日常的工作的过程中，你能预见未来，就这个对我来说是最赋能的一个体验。对。
啊，谢谢。那不好意思，我还想补充一下，还想补充一个问题，就是说，比如说，像我们也要准备申请美高，申请那个 prep，像我们现在才是3年级，那比如我们要大概是什么时候开始准备，然后从哪方面开始准备呢？
嗯。3年级的话呢，其实就是我觉得还是他刚刚讲到，就是学生是什么样的一个学生。其实我觉得我们至少在美国的精英教育里面，很看重一个求知欲和他的一种深度探究的能力。就这个其实是在课堂中是表现出来的，尤其这个学校学术水平比较高的情况下，咱们的学校比如它就有这样一些机会，支招孩子去做更深度的探究。然后他真正是爱学习的，love for learning 是很深的，不代表说你一定要考试考多少分。而是说你真的是在看到一个课题，做一个事情，你就会有深度的探究，以及你对这个学习本身是有强大的热情的。我觉得其实小朋友在小的时候这样的一种精神内核很重要，然后你能感受到就是孩子各方面的他的这个领导力啊，还包括所有的这些他的这个他是谁的这么一个 identity 也会在这个时候有凸显。所以我觉得其实不用太，其实在这个低年级的情况，不用家长其实很多时候反而是让孩子去自发的去发生一些真正的那种突破改变，会更打动人一些。我们发现其实我们在看待这样的孩子，面试这样孩子过程中，很多时候是真正孩子敢于做自己的孩子，他会比较有力量感。我们要给孩子多的空间，让他做自己就好了。对，
谢谢，谢谢。
好奇，哎，谢谢你，
对，
你好，
还有一个家长要先，你说。
对不起，我可以提个问题吗？
哎，
因为我就是在纽约，然后我们家的2个孩子呢，第一个是因为是上的那个特殊高中，然后第二个我们就选了那个也是考了一个纽约的私校，然后今天我听这个讲座呢，我就是特别关心，因为我们家这个老二吧，他上这个纽约的私校呢，我们也是第一次上私校，所以我也不是很懂。我就很关心，就是说，像如果在相同的条件下，2个学生在相同的条件下，那么，对于那个招生官，大学的招生官来说，更喜欢招这个公校的呢，还是更喜欢招这个私校的学生？我们私校的学生有没有在申请大学的时候有一些，呃，就是有一些什么，就是比如说，是不是藤校的招生官会更喜欢一些？
其实对于学校来说，他其实也希望有 diversity，所以他肯定不会一味的只喜欢私校或者他只喜欢公校，他是希望找到平衡的。对于公校和私校区别来说呢，一般来说呢，公校的竞争会更激烈一些。就假如说公校就是这些名额，但是公校一个学校可能人数就比私校多很多，一个年级的人数就比私校多好几倍。所以相当于你哪怕你的名额是差不多，就我比如说，假如说这个学校真的就50%公校，50%私校，但你50%那个50%里面的那些人，他是要在更可能3、4倍的这么池子里面竞争。所以从竞争的角度来说，一定是公校，我觉得竞争性更强的，而且它定制化的程度低一些。毕竟公校嘛，它也不用学费，它售后服务的意识会浅一些，然后它这种客服的意识会浅一些，不像我们私立学校，不是说我们就怎么去。就怎么去就不是说去讨好家庭或怎么样吧，但是服务意识是一定是强的，因为它是在付费，然后你必须得有这样的一种 service 在里面。如果你没有的话呢，对吧？这个说不过去。美国它就是一个教育，也是个产品。私立学校，我们不同的学校，它其实也是在卖不同的产品。所以从这个角度来说，私立学校它的服务的这个整个的一个水平层次，跟公立学校那是没有办法比的啊。就是我们学生出现问题，那是一个团队过来解决这个学生的问题。你在公立学校来说，你遇到问题的话，你找人不一定找得到，老师都不回邮件的。那没办法，那他就是这么一个，对吧？但是不同的公立学校不同的机制啊，有些公立学校在这个税很高的地方，低税高的地方，它就相对来说，人家有那个资金，对吧？就政府有那个拨款，所以它其实财务方面也会更加灵活一些，它能够做的支持给到的这个助力，肯定还是会比起一般在一些税比较低的地方啊，税收比较低的地方，它肯定是高一个层级别的。但是它的这个2个逻辑是不一样的，就公立学校、私立学校的整个运作的逻辑是不一样的。私立学校更像是个 business，
啊，所以它的售后服务啊，它的整个的一个这个服务意识啊的这种会更强一些啊，所以有些时候家长的诉求我们可能更好的满足，然后包括学生的问题，我们能更好地用团队和用专业的知识去解决，所以这个我觉得还是有一个区别的。那至于这个对于升学的影响，那这个就是多维度的，并不是公立学校学生升学都是，对吧？它都有面面观，就它都有它的一个不同的这个呈现的形式，所以它没有办法这样做一个横向的比较。